Alright, ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? My name is Dananu, and I'm the man with the black privilege. And with this video here, we're going to be talking about the Eternals and Shang-Chi. And since I'm going to have some things to say about Shang-Chi, we're going to save that for last. But for the Eternals, honestly, I don't have nothing really to say about this one. Like, I've been reading Marvel ever since I was a kid, right? And the Eternals have never been one of the comic books that I've read. I know about them. I know the origin of them, but it's one of those things where it's like, since I've never read it, I don't know if they're going to be true to character or nothing like that. I'm going in basically blind. I know their history in regards to where they started or where their race started, where they ended up, and all of the things that's in between. Let's say like, the Inhumans and the mutants and stuff like that. Because a lot of things in Marvel Comics spin out of the older ancient races that came to Earth before, like the Eternals, the Kree, the Deviants, the Celestials. They all kind of came to Earth before and messed with it some kind of way. And out of them messing with stuff kind of spawned other problems and people and enemies that pop up, or superhero beings in the modern day in Marvel 616, the comic book. So I have an idea of who they are, but I just don't think this movie is going to lead into anything. By them having the Eternals, period, just off jump, it's gonna make for a prequel, like, oh, this happened 65 billion years ago, type thing. So it's not gonna tie into nothing that's happening in modern day. I think this movie is basically gonna be an excuse for them to write in future storylines and future things that can spin out of it, aka mutants. Marvel can't just be like, oh, mutants existed. I mean, they could. I'll touch on a way they could do that in a little bit, but they don't want to just be like, oh, mutants have existed this whole time and nobody never knew, because that would be kind of really stupid. Where were the X-Men during all these world-shattering events that the Avengers and whatnot had to face? So to avoid answering those questions, I think they're going to make this movie, and let's say by the end of this Eternals movie, whatever the catastrophe world-ending event is going to be, I think that's going to basically seed mankind some kind of way. And then in the modern day, mutants are going to be starting popping up, and that's going to be their explanation for, like, oh, here's these people with powers that are just suddenly popping up. But honestly, they have an easier way of doing that. I know most people probably don't think the TV stuff matters, but maybe not as far as Netflix, but I know as far as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it definitely does. You've had Inhumans pop up all around the world in that show with powers through, if I remember right, fish oil pills. Basically some inhuman genetic material or whatever was seeded in the ocean, and when people caught fish, they made fish oil pills out of the stuff that's in the fish, and that basically activated any latent inhuman and would make them go through pterogenesis, and they would get superpowers. That's an easier way of them, that's an easier way of explaining mutants, in my eyes. If you don't want to call them Inhumans, just be like, okay, look, well, this fish oil pill in humans, let's say it would make them go through pterogenesis and they would get powers. But let's say in a subsect of humanity, the other part of humanity, let's say who weren't inhuman, they somehow had genetic mutations that happened, and some of them either died from it, or a lot of them became mutants. You can explain that, because you had that in your storyline, a part of your continuity. But maybe Marvel is just like, fuck Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't think they should do that, but it's one of those things where it's like, it's already in your universe. You don't have to do anything. You just gotta flashback to something, give it a couple sentences of narration. But there you go, there's mutants, and that explains why it's happening in modern day versus 60 years ago, like it was in a comic book. So I think that's a better way of doing it. But I think Marvel is going to use this Eternals movie as uh, a get out of jail free card when it comes to mutants and people with superpowers popping up and stuff in the future, because this feels like a movie they don't have to make. This isn't tying into anything recent, timeline wise. So it's like, I don't know, because that means if it doesn't tie into anything recent timeline wise, then nothing in the movie matters, unless you just want to do a backstory explaining how the universe got to this point. Then you can, kind of sort of, make that and explain that. But outside of that, why are they making this movie? So that's the only thing where it's like, okay, they're writing themselves out of a hole with this movie some kind of way, because the Eternals, they were all like perfect beings. They were all like Superman-esque. They had every superpower in the book. They could fly. They had super healing, super speed. Like, they had everything, so you basically have these beings who are, let's say, genetically perfect, essentially. And they were all like that, or most of them were like that. And then you had like the deviants, who were like the ones who weren't genetically perfect, that looked all grotesque and had genetic defects, and they looked monstrous. So, and they would always fight and stuff like that. So it's kind of a way of like, okay, here are these people with powers. Maybe something happens on Earth back in the day during their movie, and something gets left behind on Earth or seeds into early man's development on Earth, and it took like 65 million years for it to kick in, but bam, mutants. That's what I think is going to happen with this. But on the next movie here, we're going to be talking about Shang-Chi. What's it called? Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Okay. I'm going to have a little bit to say about this movie, and it's not going to be good. Definitely not going to be good. I read a little bit of Shang-Chi. I'm not going to say I read a whole lot. I know who his character is. I've seen him in other people's comic books like Spider-Man and stuff like that. He is Marvel's Bruce Lee analog. I like the character. I like what he represents. The only problem with Shang-Chi that I see is, in the MCU, you already have his character, kind of, sort of. You have Iron Fist. I like Iron Fist more as a character than Shang-Chi, because Shang-Chi was just like, oh, I'm a guy that just knows martial arts. That was his whole thing. He didn't really have any kind of, quote unquote superpowers. It was just like, oh, I've mastered a lot of martial arts, and that's my thing. So he's like Marvel's, Asian kung fu guy. And and he came out at a time, I think it was during the 70s when he came out, where that whole kung fu movie vibe type was going around, where everybody was making kung fu movies, and Marvel tried to capitalize on that by making a comic book character. So he starts off as like a racist character to begin with, but he's a decent character. I'm not going to get on here and say that he's not. He is a decent character. My whole thing is, like, you already have Iron Fist as your kung fu guy. If you don't want to use and I forget what his name is. If you don't want to use the white guy that was in Netflix because they can't use it, then wait a couple years, bring Iron Fist into the movies. You already have his character there. People at least already know who he is, but given what happened with the Netflix shows, maybe Marvel don't want to do that, because not everybody liked his character because of how shitty his show was. I think if they could give him a movie, I don't know if that guy can carry a movie or not. I mean, I haven't seen him in anything else, but as somebody who was a fan of Iron Fist, I liked him in season 2 a hell of a lot more than season 1 or the Defenders. But I think if you put him in a movie and surround him by good people, this could be, he could be a good Iron Fist, and you make Iron Fist do stuff that Iron Fist does in the comic books, which he did not do in Netflix. So I don't think it's him or Iron Fist as a character, which is bad. It's just the show that they fucking put him in, is bad. It is what it is. And Shang-Chi, to get back on that, like I said, I haven't read a whole lot, but has he fought the Mandarin before? Like, I don't recall the Mandarin, because the Mandarin's an Iron Man bad guy for the most part. Like, yeah, he's fought the Avengers a couple times, fought Fin Fang Foom a couple times, but for the most part, the Mandarin is an Iron Man bad guy. And that's what kind of pissed me off with Iron Man 3 when they was like, oh, here's this really cool Mandarin played by Ben Kingsley. And they came out with that second Iron Man 3 trailer, which blew my fucking mind. And I was like, oh shit, this is a really great movie. This is gonna be a really great trailer. And then that fucking scene in the movie when it was like, oh, they just made a joke out of the fucking Mandarin. That pissed me the fuck off. I hated that fucking movie. Love the trailer for it. That second trailer, man. I was so hyped. I had that trailer as my computer background for like the longest time. But man, I remember that trailer. Like I remember the part when it was like people was falling out of the plane in the trailer and Iron Man flew out there and it was like, all right, how many can we carry? Crap, he was like, what did he say? He was like, how many can we carry? It was like 8. Or no, it was like, how many people? 10. How many can we carry? 6. And it was like, oh shit, that means you gotta pick and choose, somebody gonna die. But I just hated how they shitted on the Mandarin in that. But then Marvel, after that movie came out, they had the Mandarin one shot. I forget what they called it, but it was with that guy being in prison and he gets broke out by the Mandarin or his organization, the 10 Rings, and it's like, oh, you took my name and made a mockery of it, so I'm gonna fuck you up because of it. So they basically kidnapped him out of prison. So ever since they had that, I was like, okay, so the Mandarin, the real Mandarin, is still out there, and maybe they may bring him back in a future Iron Man movie. But it's just kind of messed up, is because now that they're bringing him into the movies, I want him to fight Iron Man, you know. And now that we no longer have Iron Man, it's like, come on, like, why are you putting him in Shang-Chi? I know that the reason why they probably didn't put the Mandarin in Iron Man is because the Mandarin, when they came out with him, he how would I describe this tastefully? So okay, the Mandarin, when he came out in the comic books, it was during that time period where everybody was, let's say, you know how, like, for lack of a better term, racist white people, let me just say it that way. Every once in a while, like when it comes to people of my skin tone and color, you had all those black racist cartoons of us eating chicken and watermelon and being lazy and all that kind of sort of stuff, like that old school Disney racism. But Asian people also had a period like that too, along with Native Americans and Hispanics. With Asians, they were always seen as like the buck-toothed Asian character type with, you know, with glasses that would speak all funny, and people would always make fun of their accents and their languages and their names and that kind of sort of thing. So when the Mandarin first came out in the comic books, he was that kind of sort of a character. Like if you go back and look at some of those early ass, you know, comic books when he fought Iron Man with the big ass purple M on his chest, he looks like he's a racist Asian caricature. He wasn't in the comic books for the most part, you know, I mean, but he definitely did look the part and definitely did played into that when they came out. But as the times went on, they changed his character. They made him, let's say, a magical threat to Iron Man. He was the Iron Man's antithesis. You know, Iron Man was all about science and technology. Mandarin was all about magic and using the powers of his rings, the 10 rings of the Mandarin. And each one of the rings did something different. One would do weather control, one would do mind control, one would do reality manipulation, one would manipulate gravity. Each ring did something different. And by them rolling him into Shang-Chi, I think that they're gonna have Shang-Chi be his son. And if I remember right, Shang-Chi isn't related to the Mandarin at all. I think this may be something that they're doing for the movie specifically, and I'm not sure how I feel about that, because like I'm a huge fan of the Mandarin when it comes to that Mandarin and Iron Man dynamic. I love that. That's Iron Man is my second most powerful superhero. He was my second most popular hero compared to or next to Spider-Man back in the day. Spider-Man has kind of came and went after what Marvel recently did with him, but a big reason why I loved Iron Man was because of some of those old school feuds that he had with the Mandarin. Hell, even in the Iron Man cartoon series back in the 90s, the Mandarin was the main bad guy, and they would fight like every fucking episode or every few episodes. So I'm a huge fan of the Mandarin as a character, and to see him just bypass Iron Man specifically, and people are gonna now know him as a Shang-Chi villain. It's like, fucking no. You know, like, I don't like I don't care that you put him in the movie, but like, don't relate him to Shang-Chi and be like, oh, I hate my dad, I'm gonna stop my dad from taking over the world. Like, fucking no, that's not who the Mandarin is. You know? But maybe this is something that Marvel has done before in the comic books. And like I said, I don't know Shang-Chi all that well, and I'm not gonna get on here and try to lie and pretend that I know him. You know, I know of him. I respect his character. I know he's that one martial arts dude that can whoop anybody's ass. You know, when it comes to Marvel, outside of, let's say, like, maybe like Iron Fist would be like a close second, but I think Shang-Chi would still give it to him. So it's, maybe they've done something like this in like a what if story in the comic books, or some side story, maybe Ultimate, you know, universe Shang-Chi was the Mandarin's son or something. Maybe that's what they're pulling from. I don't know, you know, so maybe this is something that, you know, that they're just pulling and I'm just not familiar with it. But I know as far as the main two characters, I think Shang-Chi's dad was and like I said about Asian archetypes, I think his name was Fu Manchu. I could be wrong, but I remember either Fu Manchu was a character in Shang-Chi's comic books, but I don't remember if he was like his dad or somebody he would fight in his comics. But prime example of that Asian racist archetype. For those of you who don't know, the Fu Manchu is the name of that kind of sort of racist Asian type stereotype from back in the day that they would also introduce. That's why the mustache of the same name, that's what that mustache comes from, for those of you who don't know. But I'm hoping that see that's the thing. The Mandarin has a lot of different I was gonna say I hope that the movie turns out good, but the Mandarin has a lot of iterations that they can pull from. They can have the old school Mandarin when he first came up and fought Iron Man, where a guy just decked out in a big robe, has 10 rings, and they make him fight. Kind of like, you know, think Ben Kingsley from Iron Man 3, but he had superpowers, you know, think something like that. Or in Iron Man recently, in the past few years, they had him come back and had him fight Iron Man, and he was more of like the Chinese businessman type character. Meaning, like, he walked around in a suit like John Wick. He still had the rings and the powers, but he would use his powers to control people and sometimes fight people, but he wouldn't get his hands dirty, you know. If they do that, I think that could be the Mandarin that I would rather see on screen, rather than having the, you know, being decked out with the long hair and the robe and everything like that. Like, I would want to see him in that maybe like once, maybe like the ending fight scene, but, you know, have like the first half of the movie, have him be like businessman Mandarin, and having, let's say, him running some kind of Chinese company that's seated somewhere that Shang-Chi has to go in there and deal with them, you know. And maybe him and Shield got to deal with that, because I know, if I remember right, he worked with Shield a whole lot. So it could be one of those things where maybe they bring Shield back and have them be in the movie. But knowing white America, I think they're probably just gonna make him the kung fu guy. They're probably gonna have him, let's say, have some kind of family break from the Mandarin, where it's like, oh, I don't like where my father is going, I'm the only one with the skills to really stop him, and then have him take down the Mandarin at the end of the movie. I don't think, you know, I would want them to introduce Shield and go that route, but something tells me they probably won't. They probably will make it kind of like a good versus evil type storyline, you know. It's just, I just have a hint of that, because they have to make his kung fu stuff the focus of the movie, not Shield, not the Avengers, not anything else that they're tied into, because they have to set him up as his own character. And I think they're gonna use him as the martial arts guy in the MCU, instead of, let's say, like Iron Fist or Daredevil or somebody else who's also nice in martial arts. So I think it could be a good movie. I know it's gonna probably rake in money, and possibly the only reason Marvel is probably doing this is to appease to that Chinese market. I want to say ever since Disney bought them, they've been appeasing to that Chinese market hard. They had the one scene in Age of Ultron where they went to China, Iron Man 3, I think opened in China really strong. Every one of these MCU movies, they appeal to China, in some kind of way, whether that's through marketing, trailers, or let's say like posters or materials, that kind of sort of thing. Because China is the biggest market in the world. So by them introducing, hey, we have this kung fu badass who's as nice as anybody else, I think that could be a real big reason to get Marvel that Chinese money that they want, because now they can make a Chinese superhero and China will eat that shit up with chopsticks. No racist pun intended. But that's just been my thoughts on the movie, and also what we talked about in the first part of the video. The next video here, we're going to be talking about Loki's TV series and WandaVision. 80s titled TV show, but that's going to be about Wanda's and Vision's, obviously, TV show here. So if you guys, have anything to say about Shang-Chi, or scroll back up here because my old man memory is forgetting things. The Eternals, yeah. If you guys have anything to say about Shang-Chi or the Eternals and you want to talk about stuff in the comments, let me know down below. My name is Denanu, and I'm the man with the biggest and the most blackest privilege on YouTube. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.